everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 154. Today I'm going to talk about Le Havre, the inland port. This is a two-player game. Designer Uwe Rosenberg, who did Agricola and Le Havre and Or Labora. This is sort of in the vein of the Agricola Small Creatures game. It's two-player only, and it takes about 30 minutes, which is about right. This game actually, even though like the Agricola one was basically Agricola is kind of without the cards, just the worker placement, and it just had animals and there were no vegetables to grow. This one is basically a condensed Le Havre, but it doesn't really feel like Le Havre to me. It feels more like Or Labora because it's got a resource wheel and the buildings come out in a fixed order every game. Now there also is another very interesting mechanism to the game, which is actually kind of the heart of the game in some ways. It's a big part of the game, and it's sort of this glorified inventory spreadsheet thing. Now don't go running away when I say spreadsheet, because it's not super mathy or anything, but it's really interesting how it sort of combines sort of storage issues and inventory issues with your your company here, whatever you're representing, into the game. It's really cool. So let me show you how the game works, and then I'll come back and say what I think. Okay, I've got the game set up here. Each player is going to get a little storage warehouse area here. You can see they've got cubes along the track here. There's colored markers there to show the starting position. Everybody's going to get 3 coins. Now these cubes here represent different goods. So you've got grain, wood, brick, and fish. And it's important to note that grain and fish can count as food. Some resources will just require food. And then each player has their own little wheel here, like so. Now the game does come with extra markers here that you can use instead of cubes. So if you wanted to use these little markers here just for, so you don't knock them over, maybe as easy, then you can use these little tokens here. Now off to the side here, you've got sort of a building display here, and I've stacked these up. And these are going to come out basically 1 stack per turn. And I've stacked them up just to sort of conserve room, but when we play we like to just kind of drag them out like so. So you can see here you've got the A buildings, and you can see all of the A buildings coming up. And then on the other side we've got all the B buildings. And they're indicated on the board as well, but it's also a good idea as you start to learn some of the strategies to see kind of what's coming up and keep that in mind so you can kind of plan ahead. So we're going to do the A turn. All the A buildings will come up. They'll be available for purchase. Going to the next turn, the B buildings will then be added to the A buildings. The A buildings don't go away. And then we'll go into the next turn. The C buildings will be added. And we'll just put that somewhere off in the center of the board that both players can access. So on your turn, you basically will have a series of actions that each player will take turns taking. You can either purchase a building or activate a building. Now purchasing a building is very simple. Let's just take a quick look at this building here. This is the Masons Guild, and you can see it costs you 6 wood and 3 brick to purchase this one. And then this one over here, like this one will cost you 10 food. So this will cost you some combination of fish or grain. And so there's just various purchasing costs. Some of these will cost you francs, that'll cost you a franc, and so on. When you purchase a building, you're going to put it on your display here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a newly purchased building and stick it here where the 0 marker is. And there it's going to stay. And then at the end of each turn, you're going to move this dial 1 tick every turn. So that building's going to stay there, and it's going to sort of accrue some resources for you. So again, you can purchase a building and activate a building. So to activate a building, what you're going to do is you're going to take one of these buildings here and then send it all the way to the 0 marker. But you're going to take note of the number of where it currently is. So I'm going to look at this one here. And what this is telling me is that I can basically gain 3 wood or 3 brick because it's in the 3 spot. If I had waited another turn like here, then I would be able to take 4 of each. So basically you correspond some of the icons here with the value of basically how many turns you've waited. So I'm going to activate that, and that's going to be in action. Now if we zoom in a little bit on these wheels here, you can see we've got A, B, C, D, E, F on this one. And then if we move over to the other player, we've got G all the way through L. And that's going to correspond to, again, these building tracks here. So you can see as we move these along, you're going to be able to know which phase you're in, which buildings to bring out. But if we move back over here, basically the first player is going to be the player that is dealt this board here with the A. And you can tell that the first player is going to go first on this turn because their little icon here is in a silhouette of a sort of an outline of yellow there. So the first turn is going to happen. This player is going to go first. There's going to be 3 total actions. So player 1 is going to go first, player 2 is going to take an action, and then player 1 is going to take an action. Then both players are going to move their dials like so. So this guy's going to move his dial. So we're going to use player 1's dial for the first half of the game to keep track of which building phase we're on. But since player 2's dial is pointed to an outlined and highlighted thing, he's going to go first on this turn. But we're going to get the number of actions from player 1's dial like so. So if we go over here, then we're going to get 3 more actions. But this time player 2 is going to go first, then player 1, then back to player 2. And then again, we move the dials, and player 2 moves his dial, and then we're on building C. Player 1 is going to go first because he's in the highlighted, and then he gets an action, player 2 gets an action, player 1 gets an action, and so on. Now once we've gone all the way around player 1's dial here, we're going to start using player 2's dial to dictate how many actions we have. So you can see the number of actions actually is going to go up quite a bit in the game. So on the last round, you're actually going to have 9 actions split between both players. Now the way to keep track of the actions is basically the number of buildings in the 0 slot, because when you buy a building it's going to always go to the 0, and then when you use a building it's going to go to the 0. Now some of the buildings don't have necessarily an activated ability, and they have these little locks on these. And these are going to come in at the end of the game. Basically you're going to buy this one for 15 food, and it's going to be just worth 20 points at the end of the game. So these don't actually go on your wheel, you're just going to set them aside. So what we like to do is take the extra tokens here, because there's, let's see, 8 extra tokens. So you can actually basically put the number of actions worth of tokens in the middle of the board and then discard them after each person takes an action. And that's an easy way to keep track of the actions, especially in the later part of the game where you're getting tons of actions. So let's take a closer look at these little inventory boards and then some of the buildings' abilities. Now there's just a ton of unique buildings in here. I'm not going to go over each one obviously, but let's just take a good look at the gist of them. So the first thing to note about these little inventory boards is this icons up here in the upper right. And this is showing you how to pay for something. So let's say I wanted to purchase this building. I needed 7 wood and 5 brick. Well, right now you can see I've got 2 wood and 3 brick. And let's say I'd increase a little bit and move these up a little bit, and I'll show you how you move these up. So you can easily tell how many you have. You basically take this number here and then add it to that number. So in this case I've got 13 wood. And then in this case I've got 5 plus 9, so I've got 14 brick. So if I spend 1 wood, I'm going to move it left. So now you can take a look. I've got 3 plus 9, now I've got 12. Remember, I was at 13, now I've got 12. You can always reference the amount you have by combining the row and the column. If I'm going to spend 4, remember I'm at 12 now, I'm going to drop it down left like that. So now I've got 8. 6 plus 2, so 12 minus 4 is 8. So it's very easy to, once you get the hang of it, after a couple of turns, you'll be able to quickly tell how much resources you have. So if you want to spend 3, you just drop it down. So I went from 14 to 11, and that's how you spend resources. Now, you may get into a situation where one of these cubes is sort of too far to the left or even too far to the right, and so when you spend, you don't get any change at all. So you have to keep that in mind. And this is kind of an interesting aspect here. So let's take a look back at our example of the hardware store here. So if you basically spend this, and remember, let's say, just for argument's sake, it was in the 3, and then you rotated it down to the 0, you basically get to go up 3 wood or 3 brick. But the arrow direction is very, very important, like so. So if I had here, I could choose 3 brick, and I go 1, 2, 3, right? But if let's say I was here, and I activated this for the brick, I'm going to hit a wall here. I'm going to go 1, 2, and I can't go any further. I'm not allowed to wrap around or do anything like that. So it's actually a good idea to try to get these cubes. You want to get them as high as possible, but you also want to kind of keep them in the middle so that when you activate a gain from a building, you're not going to run into any walls. For example, you may get a building like this. This is the kiln. And so when you activate this one, you're going to move it actually left and up diagonally the number of spaces based on where you had it on the board there. So if I had the red one here and I activated it 3 spaces, I'd go 1, 2, 3, and you get a ton. You're going to increase quite a bit instead of just moving it right. But again, you don't want it too far to the left. If you've got, let's say your red was here at 10 and you don't want to activate this because you're just going to boom, hit that wall, and you're going to waste any possible extra bonus resources you got from that. And there's just a ton of buildings here. Like this one will let you do any resource of your choice. This one actually means you're going to go up, move the grain up right diagonal as many spaces as on your board here. Plus you're actually going to move it back down one space. So basically the number of spaces minus one. So anytime you see anything like this here where you've got just sort of a little square into a square, it's basically one space no matter what it was on here on the board. And so you may have something like this here. So you can see like you go from one space to another. So this one, if you activate this one, you're going to get 1 franc per space that you're on. And then you're going to move the grain and the fish over just one spot. Not the number of spots on here, but actually just one spot. Now at the end of the game, the buildings are going to be basically worth this number of points. So this one here is worth 18 points. But at any time in your turn, you can actually sell this thing back at half the francs if you need some money for something. So you can sell that back into the supply. The other thing to keep in mind is if you leave a building here like so, and this board goes all the way around, and then you get into this danger zone here, then once it hits in here, then you have to sell this back at half the supply. You don't want to wait too long, or basically the building sort of spoils in a sense. And that's pretty much the game. You're either going to buy a building here, activate a building to get some stuff. The buildings are going to be worth points at the end of the game. There are the bonus buildings like so. You know, this is just worth a lot of points at the game. There's some combo buildings. Basically, you get points for each building with a lock you have on it. This one will give you points for each grain. So you basically count up all the grain wherever this is, and you get points like that. Oh, I almost forgot. You can pay your opponent a franc to use one of his buildings. That's actually a big part of the game. So that's another aspect. So you can pay him a franc, and you can use his building that maybe he was saving. And that's really a good part of the game. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's a ton of buildings to look at and sort of neat little combos you can do. And just, you know, just sort of a lot of jockeying, a lot of, you know, kind of shrewd economic, you know, stuff that's really kind of compact and pressed into a nice short half-an-hour game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. I enjoy this game quite a bit. I think I like it better than the Agricola two-player game. There just seems like there's a little bit more, I don't know, screwage you can do a little bit. You know, there's a little bit more interaction with buying the, you know, the activation from somebody. And, you know, in Agricola one, there's worker placement and stuff, but I don't know, it just seems like in that one you just get a lot of sheep and then you score a bunch of points that way. This one I really like. I really like the inventory system. It's really neat. I really like that aspect of it, of how you've got to figure out where to put your cube. You know, that's something I haven't really seen before in a game. So I think I really like it for that aspect. And it has the wheel aspect, and there's just a lot of sort of, I don't know, in a sense, a lot more planning you can do with this one, a little bit more playing you can do with different strategies to try to get, you know, lots of points. And in this game you get a ton of points. I think every game I played, everybody's always getting like 200 points or 230 points, tons and tons of points. So there's a lot of counting of points at the end. But it's not too bad. You just, you know, got to check your work if the score is really close. But yeah, it's very interesting, and there's a lot of, you know, sort of trying to plan and bam and grab those nice buildings, but you can still use it. So you need your franc supply. You need a lot of gold to be able to use other people's buildings. So it's quite enjoyable. And the thing is you know, I feel like I'm trying to tell you there's more strategy in it than there is, but it's a 30-minute game. You know, I mean, really, once you get this down, it's like 30 minutes non-stop. And you can just play this really, really quickly. But it's nice because it packs in a nice chunk of meat in that 30 minutes. And the Agricola one does too. So I think, you know, folks probably will have a favorite of the two. Kind of like, you know, people kind of not argue, but, you know, it's like Agricola is better than Le Havre, Le Havre is better than Agricola. But they both provide, you know, pretty different experiences. You know, so I would say, you know, try them both. I think this one is my favorite for sure. I think I actually like Le Havre better than Agricola, but anyway, yeah. So take a look at it. It's quite enjoyable. In 30 minutes, I mean, I keep coming back, and it's like 30 minutes of just so much stuff in that 30 minutes of condensed, you know, economic strategy and shrewd, like, you know, jacking somebody's building and stuff. It's cool. Okay, thanks.